It's funny. You spend your whole life worried about the little things, about paying the mortgage on time, about whether your son is eating his vegetables, about making sure the house in Scottsdale is perfect for when guests come over. You worry about everything except the one thing that can change it all in an instant. My name is Diane Cotton. I'm 68 years old, and my story starts on the day my life was supposed to end. It began with the title. After my cancer diagnosis, my son and his wife flew to Paris. But before they flew anywhere, I was sitting in a hospital room that felt more like a box. The walls were a sickening shade of white. The air was cold, and the only sound was the polite, quiet hum of a machine I didn't want to know the name of. Dr. Evans was a good man, I suppose. He had that kind, practiced sadness in his eyes that doctors get when they're about to ruin someone's day. He'd been my doctor for 10 years. He'd seen me through the flu, through a broken wrist, through my husband's passing. But this was different. Diane, he said, folding his hands on the desk. The tests came back. I just nodded. I'd been feeling tired for months. Not just, I'm in my 60s tired. This was a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. I blamed it on the heat in Arizona. I blamed it on getting older. It's cancer, he said. The world didn't stop. The machines didn't stop humming. Nothing changed except everything. It's stage 3. Stage 3. I felt my heart drop into my stomach, a cold, heavy stone. I am not a woman who cries easily. I raised a son on my own after his father died. I managed our finances. I built a life. I am a strong woman. But in that moment, I gripped the cold plastic arms of the chair to keep my hands from shaking. Stage 3. That wasn't a warning. That was a sentence. My mind didn't go to treatments. It didn't go to survival rates. It went to my son. Clifford. My Clifford. My boy. He was in his 30s, a bright man, successful. I'd poured my entire life into him. I was so proud. He was my first thought. He would know what to do. He would be here. He would hold my hand and say, "It's okay, Mom. We'll fight this." The doctor was still talking. Something about oncologists and treatment plans, and I don't know. I held up a hand. "Excuse me, doctor," I said, my voice sounding surprisingly steady. "I need to make a call." He nodded, gave me that sad look again, and left the room. I pulled out my phone. My hands were trembling now. I fumbled with the screen, my fingers slipping twice before I hit his name. It rang. Once. Twice. "Hi, Mom, what's up? I'm kind of busy." His voice. Concerned, but distant. Always busy. I took a breath. "Clifford, honey, I'm at the hospital. I just got my results." Oh, the disinterest was palpable. "Is it that stomach thing again? Did they give you some pills?" "No, Clifford." I closed my eyes. "Just say it, Diane. It's cancer. The doctor said it's stage 3. Silence on the other end. A long, stretching silence that felt colder than the room. "Oh," he said. "Oh." Then I heard rustling. "Wow, Mom, that's terrible news. Just awful." "I'm scared, honey," I whispered. I hated that I said it. Hated the weakness. Yeah, of course. Look, more rustling. I could hear another voice in the background. Rita, his wife. I could always hear Rita. "Clifford." I asked. "Mom, listen, it's terrible timing. Just awful." "Timing," I said, the word feeling foreign. "What do you mean, timing?" "Well," he stammered. Rita and we've had this trip planned for months. To Paris. We're supposed to leave tomorrow." I couldn't speak. The hum of the machine in the room suddenly felt deafening. Paris. I had stage 3 cancer, and my son was talking about Paris. You're still going?" I asked. I could barely get the words out. Well, yeah, he said, and his voice shifted. He was defensive now. Annoyed. I mean, it's already paid for, Mom. It's non-refundable. Thousands of dollars. What do you want us to do? Just throw that money away? Thousands of dollars. I thought about the thousands I'd spent on his college. The thousands for the down payment on his first house. The thousands for the wedding that I knew was a mistake. I have cancer, Clifford, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I know, Mom. I know. And we'll pray for you, really. We'll light a candle at Notre Dame. But you just focus on getting better. You're a fighter. You'll be fine. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Just focus on what the doctors say. I heard Rita whisper in the background, tell her to be strong. We have to go. Rita says to be strong, Mom. Look, I gotta go, we're finishing packing. This is just, what a downer. Okay, love you. Fight hard. Bye. He hung up. I sat there, holding the phone, staring at the white wall. The call had lasted maybe 3 minutes. He didn't ask which hospital. He didn't ask what kind of cancer. He didn't ask if I was alone. He was worried about non-refundable tickets. The tears that I'd been holding back, they just dried up. The fear I'd felt, the shock, it vanished, and it was replaced by something else. Something cold and heavy and hard. It was clarity. I had spent 68 years giving, sacrificing, being the strong one, being the bank, being the unpaid babysitter, the emotional support, the one who always showed up. And in the one moment I needed someone to show up for me, my son was worried about his vacation. He was right about one thing. It was already paid for. He and Rita had been living on my emotional dime for years. I looked at my phone. I'd been a fool. I saw my whole life, my sacrifices, and I saw what they were worth. Non-refundable. I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt angry. No, not even angry. I felt resolved. I imagined them packing, tossing colorful shirts into expensive luggage, laughing about the restaurants they would go to, while I sat in a paper gown, wondering how much time I had left. The doctor said stage 3. He didn't say stage final. I am not a victim. I am a 68-year-old woman, and I have just been given a very clear, very sharp wake-up call. I opened my contacts. I scrolled right past Clifford. I went down to L. I found the name I was looking for. My lawyer. I pressed the call button. He picked up on the second ring. David, it's Diane Cotton. Diane, how are you? I've been better, I said, my voice steady. Listen, I'm at the hospital. I'm going to be fine. But I need you to come here tomorrow morning. Bring all the paperwork. What's going on, Diane? Is everything all right? I looked at the white wall. I thought about Paris. I thought about 2 weeks. I thought about everything I had built and who I had built it for. And I thought about who truly deserved it. David, I said, it's time to rewrite my will. After I hung up with David, I let the phone rest on my lap. The silence in the hospital room was heavy. It was just me and that humming machine. For the first time in 30 years, I wasn't thinking about what Clifford needed. I was thinking about what I'd done. My mind went back. It's a long, winding road being a mother. My husband, bless his heart, passed when Clifford was just 12. One day he was there. The next, it was just me and a boy who had lost his hero. I made a promise to myself. Right then, Clifford would want for nothing. I would be his mother and his father. I would be his rock. And I was. I was working in administration at a law firm. I was good at my job. I was on track for a promotion, maybe even a management position. But management meant more hours. It meant travel. And Clifford had basketball practice. He had homework I needed to check. He had a broken heart when his first girlfriend dumped him. So I didn't take the promotion. I stayed in the comfortable, steady job that let me leave at 5 o'clock on the dot. I told myself it was fine. It was for Clifford. When he wanted to go to that expensive summer camp, I sold my mother's jewelry. I told myself it was just things. He came back with a trophy. I put it on the mantel. When he wanted his first car, I drained my savings. Not a used clunker. Oh no, he wanted the one his friends had. I co-signed the loan. I paid the insurance. I told myself it was safer for him. When he got into college, a good one, out of state, I remortgaged the house. The house I had worked so hard to pay off. I packed his bags. I drove him to the dorm, and I cried all the way back to Scottsdale, not from sadness, but from pride. I did it, I thought. I got him there. I was the giver. I was the rock. I was the one who always said, yes. I thought that was my job. I thought that's what love was. Then he met Rita. I'll never forget the first time he brought her home. She walked into my house, the house I'd just scraped to keep, and the first thing she said wasn't hello or it's lovely to meet you. The first thing she said was, oh, it's cozy. Clifford, you didn't tell me your mother's house was so traditional. She was all sharp edges and shiny labels. Her nails were perfect. Her bag cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. And the way she looked at my son, it wasn't love. It was appraisal. Like she was looking at a stock she was thinking of investing in. And Clifford, he was preening. He was so proud to have this shiny, expensive-looking woman on his arm. I tried. Lord, how I tried. I invited them for dinner. Rita would pick at her food and ask if my plates were vintage. I bit my tongue. When they got married, I paid for the wedding. A big, lavish affair I couldn't afford. Rita had a list. The flowers had to be orchids. The champagne had to be French. Clifford just signed the checks that I was funding. Whatever makes her happy, Mom, he'd say. After that, the phone calls changed. It was no longer, hi, Mom, how are you? It was, hi, Mom, Rita and I were thinking, and that thinking always cost me. Mom, Rita and I are looking at a house. We're just a little short on the down payment. Mom, Rita's car is getting old, and she really needs something reliable. Mom, Rita thinks we should join the country club. And I paid. I kept giving, because I was terrified that if I said no, I would lose my son. I'd see their pictures on social media, vacations, fancy dinners, new clothes, and I'd feel a small, sick pit in my stomach. But I'd smile when they came over. I'd make their favorite pot roast. But this was different. My son and his wife were packing for Paris, while I was sitting in a hospital gown, wondering if I had 6 months or 6 years. It wasn't just the trip. It was the ease with which he dismissed me. It's already paid for, Mom. He didn't see me. He didn't see a human being. He saw an inconvenience, a downer. My illness, my mortality, was ruining his vacation vibe. All those years, I thought I was building a family. I wasn't. I was building a support system for them. I was a resource, a bank account that never said no, a free service. And now, the service was interrupted. That's what this resentment felt like. It wasn't hot, explosive anger. It was a cold, deep, settling realization. Like finally seeing a picture that's been blurry for 20 years. I had taken for granted that they loved me. They had taken for granted that I would provide. The Paris trip wasn't the disease. It was just the final, ugly symptom. The disease had been growing for decades. Every time I said yes when I should have said no. Every time I put my own needs in a drawer and locked it. Every time I accepted their casual, thoughtless dismissal of my feelings. I had raised a son who, at his core, believed that his mother's love was unconditional, but that his concern was optional. and I had allowed a woman into the family who saw me as nothing more than a link to an inheritance. The humming of the machine seemed to get louder. A nurse came in, a cheerful young woman. "Just checking your vitals, Mrs. Cotton." I let her take my blood pressure. She smiled at me. "You're looking a little better. You've got some color back in your cheeks." I almost laughed. "I think I do," I said. "I think I'm just getting started." She left, and I was alone again. My resentment wasn't a fleeting emotion. It was a decision. It was a foundation. This will I was about to change. It wasn't just a document. It wasn't about the money. It was about my life. It was about the 40 years of sacrifice I'd made, and the value I was finally placing on them. This legacy wasn't going to be about what they expected. It was going to be about what I deserved. And for the first time, I was going to be the one to decide what that was. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. The hospital is a terrible place to sleep, but for the first time in months, I'd had a few hours of real, solid rest. It was as if making one hard decision had settled something deep in my bones. A nurse came in to take my blood. I didn't even flinch. I just looked out the window and waited. At 10 o'clock sharp, David, my lawyer, walked in. He's a tall, thin man who always looks like he's apologizing for something. He was carrying a sleek, dark briefcase in one hand and a vase of flowers in the other. "Diane," he said, his voice soft, "these are from my wife. She sends her prayers." "That's lovely, David. Put them on the table. We have work to do." He set the flowers down, the vibrant colors looking out of place in the sterile room. He pulled up a chair and opened his briefcase. "I've brought a copy of your current will, the one we drafted in 2015, and a blank legal pad. Where would you like to start?" "Let's start by tearing up the old one," I said. David's eyebrows went up, just a little. "Metaphorically, of course. For now, we'll just draft the new one, and it will supersede the old. So, the 2015 will, everything to Clifford, held in trust until he turned 35, and then managed jointly with you. Now that I'm 68 and he's 38, it's just everything to Clifford." "Right. Yes. With Rita as the secondary beneficiary if anything were to happen to you both." "Rita," I said. The name tasted like ash. "Yes, she would be, wouldn't she? Okay, David, get your pen ready. This is a new will. From scratch." He clicked his pen. "I'm ready." I felt a surge. It wasn't joy. It was power. It was the feeling of holding the steering wheel after you've been in the passenger seat for 30 years. "First," I said, "I want to talk about my friend, Elizabeth. You know Elizabeth, right? My neighbor?" "I've met her at a few of your Christmas parties." "Yes. Lovely woman." "She's more than lovely," I said. "When I had the flu last year, Clifford and Rita were in Aspen. They couldn't risk getting sick. It was Elizabeth, who has her own health issues, who brought me soup. She sat with me. When I broke my wrist, she drove me to the emergency room, not my son. When I was lonely after my husband passed, she was the one who called every single night. Not once. Every night. I took a breath. Elizabeth is living on her widow's pension. It's not fair. I'm leaving her $100,000, tax-free. I want you to set it up so it doesn't affect her benefits, if you can." David wrote it down. A bequest for Elizabeth. "Got it. What's next?" "This hospital," I said. "The doctor who diagnosed me was kind. The nurses have been good. But this disease, this cancer, it's a monster. I have more money than I need sitting in accounts for Clifford." "Well, Clifford is in Paris." "Diane," David started softly, "I'm leaving $200,000 to this hospital's cancer research fund. Specifically, I want it to go to research. So maybe 20 years from now, Some other woman sitting in this same room gets a different kind of news. Maybe they catch it at stage 1. Maybe it's just a pill, not this. David nodded, writing quickly. Generous, Diane. Very generous. Elizabeth, cancer research. Noted. He looked up, his pen poised. And now, the bulk of the estate. The house, the stocks, the savings. To Clifford. Here it was. The air in the room got thick. The humming of the machine seemed to fade. I looked at David, a good man, a man who believed in rules and order. Now, I said, for my son Clifford. I watched David's face, expecting him to just write it down. I leave him my entire estate. David's pen started moving. On one condition. The pen stopped, dead. He looked up, his eyes sharp. A condition? Diane, I advise against those. They're messy. They get contested. This one is messy, I agreed. And I don't care if it's contested. In fact, I'm counting on it. David set his pen down on the pad. What is the condition? I looked out the window. I could see the planes, tiny silver specks, flying high above the desert. I wondered if one of them was carrying my son. I turned back to David. He gets everything. The house, the stocks, the savings, all of it, on the one condition that he divorces his wife, Rita. The silence that followed was absolute. David just stared at me. He didn't blink. He was a lawyer. He'd heard everything. But I could tell he hadn't heard this. Not from me. His eyebrows shot up, so high they almost disappeared into his hairline. Diane, he said, and his voice was different. It wasn't soft and kind anymore. It was sharp. Diane, you cannot be serious. That's a restraint of marriage clause. It's manipulative. It's almost certainly not legally enforceable in Arizona. I didn't ask if it was enforceable. I said, my voice cold and calm. I asked you to write it down. I don't care if a judge throws it out. I care that Clifford has to read it. I care that he has to stand in a room with her and know the price of his inheritance. I want him to know what I thought of his marriage. I want him to make a choice. You're putting your son in an impossible position, David argued, leaning forward. You're asking him to choose between his mother's legacy and his wife. His wife asked me to choose between my health and her vacation. I shot back. And my son already made his choice. He's in Paris. He chose her. Now, I'm just putting it on paper. I'm just making it official. I'm showing him what that choice cost. A part of me was screaming, this is cruel. This is not who you are. But a new, stronger voice answered back. What they did was cruel. What they've been doing for 10 years is cruel. This isn't cruelty. This is just consequences. David ran a hand over his face. Diane, as your lawyer, I have to advise you, this is a terrible idea. It's born of anger, and wills born of anger always end in disaster. Just disinherit him, if you must. Leave it all to Elizabeth. Leave it all to the hospital. But this is a poison pill. It's not poison, David. I said, it's the antidote. He's the one who's been poisoned for the last 10 years. Let's see if he's strong enough to take it. He sighed. A long, deep sigh of defeat. He picked up his pen. He wrote it down. He read it back to me. The bulk of the estate is to be given to my son, Clifford Cotton, contingent upon the legal dissolution of his marriage to Rita Cotton. I nodded. That's it. He clicked his pen and stood up, packing his briefcase. He wouldn't look at me. I'll have the final papers drafted by tomorrow. You'll need 2 witnesses who are not beneficiaries. The nurses will do, I said. He walked to the door and paused. Get some rest, Diane. And think about this. Really think about it. He left. I was alone with the flowers and the humming machine. A strange, cold calmness washed over me. I had just taken a grenade, and thrown it into the middle of my son's life. It was a terrifying, awful thing to do, and it was the most liberating feeling I'd had in my entire life. I'd finally taken my first real step. The 2 weeks that followed were the longest of my life. That document I signed, it wasn't a metaphor. David came back the very next day. I signed it. 2 nurses, a wonderful woman from the Philippines named Maria and a young man named Ben, served as witnesses. They thought they were just witnessing a standard will. They had no idea they were witnessing my liberation. After that, the real fight began. The fight for my life. They put a port in my chest. They started the chemotherapy. I don't have the words to describe what that poison feels like. It's not just being sick. It's an invasive chemical exhaustion that goes straight to your soul. It's the taste of metal in your mouth, 24 hours a day. It's lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, too tired to cry, too sick to sleep. And in those 2 weeks, in the darkest, quietest hours of the night, I had one companion, my phone. I watched their trip on social media. Oh yes, Rita had to post everything. There they were, smiling in front of the Eiffel Tower, her in a new red coat, Clifford looking at her like she was the sun. There they were, clinking wine glasses in a cafe, living our best life. Rita had captioned it. I was in a hospital gown, living my worst. Clifford sent me exactly one text message. It came 5 days after my chemo started. I was heaving into a small plastic bowl when my phone buzzed. I wiped my mouth, my hands shaking. The text read, "Hey Mom, Paris is amazing. Hope you are doing okay. We lit a candle for you at Notre Dame." A candle? I stared at that message for a full minute. I was having poison pumped into my veins, a poison so strong it was going to make my hair fall out. A poison that was my only chance. And my son lit a candle, and he felt like he'd done his part. I didn't reply. I dropped the phone on the tray and closed my eyes. The anger I'd felt before, that was just a spark. This was a slow, hot burn. It was a fuel. It kept me going. It made me drink the awful nutritional shakes. It made me get up and walk the halls when the nurse said I had to. I had a new purpose. It wasn't just to survive. It was to outlast. Then, this morning, it happened. I was just finishing a lukewarm cup of broth. It was the 10th day. I was weak, I was sore, but I was here. My phone rang. The screen lit up, Clifford. I let it ring twice, just to hear it. Then I picked up. "Hello, Clifford." My voice was a little rough from the chemo, but it was steady. "Mom, hey, we're back." He sounded cheerful, like he was calling to tell me about a football game. "Just landed at Sky Harbor. Man, what a flight. I'm exhausted." "I'm sure you are," I said, "but, oh, it was incredible. Just incredible. You wouldn't believe the food. Rita says I've gained 10 pounds. And the sights. We saw everything." I just listened. I listened as he told me about the Louvre. I listened as he described the little leather bag Rita just had to have, the one that cost a fortune. A fortune. I thought about the copay on my new medication. "And Mom, we did it," he said, his voice full of pride. "We went to Notre Dame. It was beautiful. We lit a big candle for you. Said a prayer." "A candle?" I repeated. My voice was flat. "Yeah, for you to get better. So it all worked out. It all worked out." He'd had his vacation. He'd checked the pray for Mom box. And now he was home. "So, anyway," he said, the excitement finally draining from his voice. "The vacation was over. Time to get back to reality. How are you? You holding up?" "Holding up." I almost smiled. "I've started chemotherapy. Clifford." "Oh, right. Yikes." I could hear Rita whispering in the background, probably asking where the car keys were. "Yeah, that sounds rough. That sounds really rough. But hey, you're tough, Mom. You're a fighter. You'll get through it. He said it with the same casual energy as pass the salt. I'm sure I will, I said. Cool, cool. Well, listen, we're totally jet-lagged, and Rita has a million things to unpack. I mean, you saw the pictures. She bought half of Paris. He chuckled. I did not. We'll try to swing by the hospital later today. Or, maybe tomorrow. It's just, we gotta get settled. You understand. He was home. He was in the same city. And I was still an item on his to-do list. Something to swing by when he had a free moment. After the unpacking. After the jet lag. The clarity was so sharp it hurt. I saw him perfectly. I saw them perfectly. They hadn't just taken a vacation. They had shown me exactly where I stood. I was no longer his mother. I was an obligation. And I was about to become his biggest problem. He must have heard the silence on the line. Mom, he asked, a hint of his old annoyance creeping in. You there? You're not being a downer, are you? I took a breath. I looked at the new will, the copy David had left for me, sitting in my nightstand drawer. I'm here, Clifford, I said. My voice was ice. I'll be waiting. I hung up the phone. I didn't feel weak anymore. I didn't feel sick. The nausea was gone. All I felt was a cold, hard, powerful resolve. I wanted them to come. I needed them to come. I sat up a little straighter in the bed. I poured myself a glass of water. The confrontation I'd been avoiding my entire life, it was finally here, and I was holding a secret that they couldn't even begin to imagine. Let them come. I was ready. They didn't come that day. Of course they didn't. The jet lag and the million things to unpack were far more important. They let me wait. They let me sit in that hospital room for another 36 hours, knowing I was waiting. They finally showed up the next afternoon. I'd had another night to let that cold, hard resolve settle into my bones. I'd had my first real meal, if you can call chicken broth and 2 saltine crackers a meal. I was out of the bed, sitting in that hard, plastic visitor's chair, when the door swung open. In they walked. Clifford was holding a small, sad-looking bouquet of gas station carnations, already wilting. Rita, naturally, was looking at her phone. She didn't even look up as she walked in. Hey, Mom, Clifford started. He had that fake bright voice, the one he used when he was about to ask for money. Sorry we didn't make it yesterday. We were just, utterly wiped. He put the sad flowers on my bedside table, right next to the beautiful vase David's wife had sent. You're looking okay, he said, his eyes flicking to my lank, thinning hair. The hair, well, chemo, right? I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. Rita sighed, a loud, put-upon sound, and finally slipped her phone into her pocket. Diane, you look pale. Are you even eating? I told Clifford, we should have brought you some real food. That hospital stuff is poison. That was it. That was the line. I held up a hand. Stop. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a knife. Clifford, who was halfway to the other chair, froze. Rita finally looked at me, her eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I said, stop. I repeated, just stop talking. Mom, what is your problem? Clifford said, his defensiveness flaring up instantly. We came, didn't we? We're here. You're here? I agreed. 2 days after you got back. Nearly 3 weeks after I told you I had stage 3 cancer. You're here. I looked right at my son. I am not interested in your wilted flowers, Clifford, and I am not interested in your excuses. What is with you? He snapped. We told you the trip was non-refundable. You want us to just throw away $12,000. $12,000, I said, nodding. I let the number hang in the air. Let's talk about money then. Let's talk about what things cost. He looked confused. Rita looked wary. Do you know what I did, Clifford, when your father died? Mom, don't. Don't do this. Don't pull this pour me routine. I am not doing a routine, I said, and my voice was so cold, so steady, it surprised even me. I'm stating facts. When your father died, I was on track for a management position at the law firm. It meant more hours, more travel. But you were 12. You needed a mother. So I didn't take it. I stayed in a dead-end job for 15 more years, so I could be home at 5 o'clock to check your homework. That's what I did. What do you think that cost me, Clifford? He was silent. His face was getting red. When you wanted to go to that expensive summer camp, I continued, the one all your rich friends were going to. I didn't have the money. So I sold my mother's pearls. The ones she left me. You never knew that, did you? You just came home with a trophy. That's what that trip cost. Diane, Rita said, her voice a warning. I said, turning to her. You be quiet. I'm talking to my son. I turned back to Clifford. When you wanted to go to that fancy private college, I didn't have a college fund. Your father's life insurance was gone. So I remortgaged my house. This house, the one your wife walked into and called traditional. I paid for your car. I paid for your wedding, a wedding I couldn't afford, with a guest list of people I didn't even know because she had to have French champagne and orchids. Clifford looked like he'd been slapped. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, I said, my voice rising for the first time. It has always been like that. I have been your bank, your safety net, your strong mom who handles everything. And you, I turned to Rita, you were worse. You didn't even pretend to care. You just saw a bank account to be drained. Diane, we're a little short on the down payment. Diane, Rita really needs a new car, something safe. Diane, the country club has a new membership fee. How dare you? Rita hissed, her face pale with rage. I dare, I said, because I'm the one paying the bills. Or, at least, I was. I looked back at my son. His face wasn't angry anymore. It was just stunned. He was a 38-year-old man, but he looked like a little boy who had just been caught setting a fire. I have stage 3 cancer, Clifford, I said, my voice dropping back to that quiet, cold place. In the single most terrifying moment of my life, when I needed my son, you told me I was a downer. You were worried about your vacation. You got on a plane. You left me here to face this alone. You went to Paris, and you lit a candle. The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the drip of my 4. He couldn't say anything, because it was all true. And in that moment, the strangest thing happened. I was looking at him, at this man I had given my entire life to. His face was a mixture of shame and anger and disbelief. And I didn't feel love. I didn't feel pity. I felt nothing. The bond, the cord that had tied me to him for 38 years, it just snapped. It was gone. I wasn't looking at my son. I was looking at a stranger. A selfish, weak stranger I happen to know. I don't know who you are, I whispered. I'm looking at you, and I don't know you. That's what finally broke the spell. Rita found her voice first. This is ridiculous, she spat, grabbing her purse. She's delirious from the medicine. She's crazy. Clifford, we are not going to sit here and be insulted by a sick old woman. Clifford looked at me, and his shame turned back into anger. It was easier for him. She's right, he said, his voice shaking. You've lost your mind, Mom. He turned and walked to the door. He didn't look back. We're leaving, he said. Rita gave me one last look, a look of pure hatred. Then she followed him out. The door clicked shut. I could hear them, fuming, whispering angrily to each other as they walked down the hall. And then they were gone. I was alone again in the quiet, humming room. I looked at the ugly, wilted flowers they'd left behind. I took a breath, a deep one, and I felt light. The sickness was still in my bones. The fear was still in the back of my mind. But the weight, the 30-year-old, crushing weight of their expectations, of my silent sacrifices, of my unspoken resentment, it was gone. I had spoken my truth. And for the first time in my life, I was completely and totally free. After they stormed out, the room was so quiet I could hear the fluorescent light buzz. That sound had been driving me crazy for 2 weeks, but now it just blended into the background. That feeling of lightness I'd had, it stayed. It wasn't a temporary high from the fight. It was peace. A few hours later, my friend Elizabeth came by. She didn't know about the will, and I wasn't going to tell her. She just came in, saw the wilted carnations in the trash can, and said, "Goodness, those are depressing." She brought me a new nightgown, a soft blue one. "The hospital gowns are a disgrace," she declared. "You're a woman, not a specimen." We sat and talked for an hour, not about the cancer, not about Clifford. We talked about a new book she was reading. We talked about the silly squirrels in her backyard. It was normal. It was the most normal I'd felt in years. When she left, I felt human. The next morning, I was feeling a little stronger. The chemo was a wave, and this was a good day. The wave had pulled back out to sea. I knew it would be back, but for now, I could breathe. The truth is, I'd done something else that morning. Before Elizabeth came, before the confrontation. I'd done it right after David, my lawyer, had left. I had made another call. To my bank. I'd been with them for 40 years. The manager, a nice woman named Susan, knew me well. "Susan," I'd said, my voice a little weak. "It's Diane Cotton." "Mrs. Cotton, are you all right? You sound tired." "I'm fine, Susan, but I need to make some changes. That joint savings account, the one with my son, Clifford." "Yes, of course. A lovely account. Very healthy." "I'm sure it is." I'd said, "I'm the only one who ever puts money into it. Clifford just has a card for emergencies." Susan was quiet. She knew. "I need you to open a new account." I'd instructed a private checking and a private savings. In my name only. "And I want you to transfer every single penny from the joint account into my new private savings. Immediately. And then I want you to close the joint account and cancel his card." "Diane," she'd said, her voice dropping, that is a significant change." "Yes, it is," I'd agreed. "And I need it done an hour ago." So, while Clifford and Rita were fuming while they were too jet-lagged to visit their sick mother, I was quietly cutting the purse strings, one by one. I knew the confrontation in the hospital room was just round one. That was the emotional fight. But the real fight, the one they would actually feel, that was about money. It always had been. I was just finishing my lunch, a small bowl of Jell-O, when my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Clifford. A small smile touched my lips. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. I took a slow spoonful of Jell-O. Then I answered. "Hello, Diane speaking." "What did you do?" He didn't say hello. He didn't say Mom. He just screamed. He was breathing so hard I could hear it through the phone, like a bull. "Clifford, my goodness, what's wrong? You sound upset." "Don't you dare," he spat. "Don't you dare play innocent with me. The account. What did you do to the account?" "Which account, dear?" I asked, taking another spoonful of Jell-O. "The account. Our account. I was at the pro shop. I was buying a new set of drivers. And it was declined. Declined, Mom. In front of everyone. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was?" So that was it. Not cancer. Not his mother. This was the ultimate humiliation. A declined card at the golf club. Embarrassing, I said. My, that does sound awful for you. What did you do? He roared. Did you not pay a bill? Did you mess up the finances? What's going on? I could hear Rita in the background. Her voice was a shrill shriek. Ask her. Ask her what she did with the money. She's stealing from us, Clifford. That old witch is stealing our money. Mom, Clifford yelled. Rita thinks you're… Look, just tell me what's wrong so I can fix it. Did you get scammed? That was the moment. He still thought I was the victim. He thought I was a poor, senile old woman who'd made a mistake. He couldn't even imagine that I'd done it on purpose. There's no mistake, Clifford, I said, and my voice was perfectly calm. He stopped. The breathing, the yelling, it just stopped. What? There's nothing wrong with the account. Or, at least, there's nothing wrong with my account. What are you talking about? He stammered. I'm talking about the money, Clifford. The money I earned. The money I saved. The money you and your wife have been using as your personal slush fund for the last 10 years. That's our money, he yelled. You put it there for me. For us. For the family. I did. I agreed. I put it there. And yesterday, I took it out. Every last penny. I moved my money into my new private account. An account that doesn't have your name on it. Or your wife's. Then I closed that joint account. The card was declined, Clifford, because the account it's attached to no longer exists. Silence. It was the most beautiful silence I had ever heard. I could hear his mind working, trying to process it. This wasn't a fight about feelings. This wasn't about him being a bad son. This was real. This had consequences. You can't do that, he whispered. Oh, but I can, I said. It's my name on the mortgage I paid off. It's my name on the retirement accounts I funded. It was my money. And now it's still my money. You just don't get to spend it anymore. I could hear Rita screaming in the background now, a genuine animal sound of panic. She can't do that. Tell her she can't do that. Mom, Clifford said, and his voice was completely different. The anger was gone. Now it was just thin, scared. Mom, what are you doing? This is crazy. You're sick. You're not thinking straight. Just put the money back. We can talk about this. No, I don't think we can, I said. I pushed the Jell-O away. I am managing my own finances now, Clifford. I'm taking care of myself. You're an adult, a grown man with a wife. It's time for you to manage yours. But, Mom, the mortgage, the car payments, Rita's. Mom, we need that money. And I said, need to pay for chemotherapy. It's very expensive. I'm sure you understand. I didn't wait for him to answer. I just hung up. I held the phone in my hand, and it was completely still. I looked out the window. The sun was shining. Clifford and Rita were somewhere in Scottsdale looking at each other in sheer, blind panic. This wasn't just an emotional fight. This wasn't about a bad visit or a missed trip. The real consequences were beginning, and I had just fired the first shot. You'd think that after a phone call like that, I'd be shaking, that I'd be a wreck or terrified, or even that I'd feel guilty. I felt none of those things. I hung up the phone. I took a sip of water. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about what Clifford was thinking. I was worried about what I was going to do next. A week later, I was discharged. This is the moment. If my life had been like it was a month ago, that would have been a new kind of hell. Clifford would have shown up late, complaining about the parking. Rita would have sat in the car, tapping on her phone, annoyed that I was taking so long with the paperwork. They would have driven me back to my big, empty 5-bedroom house, a house I now saw as a monument to their greed. They would have dropped me at the door, said, "Call if you need anything," and disappeared. I would have been alone, sick, and in their prison. But that is not what happened. On discharge day, the nurse Maria wheeled me to the curb. And waiting for me, right at the front, was Elizabeth. She wasn't in a hurry. She wasn't on her phone. She was standing by her old, reliable sedan, and she had a pillow and a blanket for me for the ride home. "You ready, Diane?" she asked, her smile warm. "I'm ready, Liz," I said. She helped me into the car. Not like I was a burden, but like I was a friend. She buckled my seatbelt. She put the blanket over my lap. She got in the driver's side and looked at me. "So, back to the old place." I looked at her. "No, Liz, not back there. Ever again." I gave her an address in a different part of Scottsdale. A quieter part. She didn't ask why. She didn't say, "What about Clifford?" She just put the car in gear and said, "Okay, honey, let's go home." Home. It was a small, two-bedroom apartment in a complex with a lot of trees. It was on the ground floor. When we pulled up, the landlord, a kind woman my age, was waiting with the key. I had arranged it all from my hospital bed. The first thing I did was sell the big house. I called a realtor from the hospital, told them to list it, and told them I wanted a quick sale. The market in Scottsdale is good. I knew it would go fast. The second thing I did was hire movers. I gave them a list. Take my bed, my dresser, my mother's reading chair, the kitchen table, and the small desk from the den. The rest you can sell. Donate it. I don't care. So when Elizabeth and I walked in, it was quiet. It was empty, except for my things. Not Clifford's old trophies. Not Rita's decorating suggestions. Just me. That first night, Elizabeth made me a cup of tea and left. I was alone. The silence was deafening. For a moment, a wave of panic hit me. I'm 68. I have cancer, and I'm completely, utterly alone. I've just blown up my entire family. But then I looked around. The house wasn't cold. It was peaceful. My phone didn't ring with a demand. No one was going to walk in and expect me to make them dinner. No one was going to ask me for money. The silence wasn't lonely. It was free. I slept for 12 straight hours. The next few weeks were a new kind of routine. My life was no longer about them. It was about me. My chemo treatments continued. They were still awful. They still left me weak and sick. But the difference was now I had a reason to fight through them. I wasn't just trying to get better, so I could go back to being their caretaker. I was fighting for this, for my new, quiet, simple life. Elizabeth was my angel. She'd drive me to my appointments. She'd sit with me, knitting, not saying a word, just being there. When we got back to my apartment, I'd rest, and she'd make us both soup. "I can't believe Clifford isn't here," she said once, her needles clicking. "I can," I said, and for the first time, it didn't even hurt to say it. I started to organize my new life. I sat at my little desk, the one from my old den, and I opened my new private bank account statements. I saw the balance. The money from the house sale was in. The money from the old joint account was in. It was my money. All of it. I wrote a check for my rent. I wrote a check for the chemo copay. I set up a budget. I had enough. I had more than enough. I wasn't just surviving. I was secure. And a funny thing happened. As my mind got clearer, my body seemed to follow. The nausea after chemo didn't last as long. The fatigue was still there, but it wasn't a black hole anymore. I started to take short walks, just to the end of the apartment complex and back. I reconnected with other people, an old friend from my book club I hadn't seen in years, a cousin in another state. I realized my life had become so small, so focused on Clifford and Rita, that I had let all my other connections wither. Now, I was watering them again. The cancer, I realized, was the most devastating thing that had ever happened to me. And it was the single greatest gift I had ever received. It was the fire that burned my old, rotten life to the ground. It was the horrible, terrible, clarifying truth. I had to get a death sentence to finally get a life. I was sitting at my little kitchen table one morning, drinking a cup of coffee. The sun was streaming in the window. I was just content. The mail came. I shuffled through the bills, the junk. And then I saw it, a thick envelope from the hospital. Not the billing department. This was from Dr. Evans' office. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. This was the moment. Was the chemo working, or was it not? My hands were shaking so hard I could barely open the envelope. I pulled out the letter. It was a formal report. I scanned past all the medical words. I was looking for the conclusion. And then I saw it. Dear Mrs. Cotton, we are pleased to inform you that your recent scans show a remarkable response to the treatment. The tumor has shown significant shrinkage. We are cautiously optimistic about your progress. I read the words again and again. Cautiously optimistic. Remarkable response. I put the letter down on the table. The sun hit the paper, and I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I cried, but these weren't the tears of fear from that first day. They weren't the tears of rage I'd felt for my son. This was hope. It was a small, fragile thing, but it was real. I had a future. It wasn't the future I'd planned. It was something different. It was something new. And for the first time in more years than I could count, I was excited to see what happened next. That letter from the doctor changed everything. Cautiously optimistic. I held on to those words. I taped the letter to my new refrigerator. It wasn't just a medical report. It was a permission slip. It was the world telling me I had a right to make plans. My new life was quiet. I was healing. I was walking. I was reading. I was having tea with Elizabeth. I was finding my strength. My hair had started to fall out, as the doctors warned, but I'd bought a few beautiful scarves. I was learning to like the face I saw in the mirror. She looked like a fighter. And then, about a week after that letter, on a beautiful Tuesday morning, there was a knock on my door. It wasn't a gentle tap like Elizabeth's. It was a loud, hard, impatient knock. My heart didn't sink. It didn't pound with fear. It just hardened. I knew who it was. I opened the door, and there they were. But this wasn't the angry, fuming couple that had stormed out of the hospital. Oh no, this was a new performance. Clifford was standing there, his face pale and stressed. He was holding the biggest bouquet of roses I had ever seen. Not gas station carnations. These were the expensive ones. And Rita was crying. Tears were streaming down her face. She had a handkerchief and was dabbing at her eyes. Mom, Clifford said, his voice thick with fake emotion. Mom, thank God. Rita rushed forward and tried to hug me. Oh, Diane, we were so worried. We've been trying to find you. We didn't know where you went. We thought. She buried her face in her handkerchief and sobbed. I didn't hug her back. I just stood there, a rock in the stream of her fake tears. What do you want? I asked. Oh, Mom, Clifford said, shaking his head like I was the one being cruel. Can we just come in, please? For 5 minutes. I looked at them. I looked at the expensive flowers. I looked at the probably brand new handkerchief. This was an act, and it was an expensive one. They must be truly desperate. Fine, I said. I stepped aside. They walked into my apartment, my safe, peaceful apartment. Rita looked around, her eyes darting everywhere, judging the small space, no doubt. Clifford just looked at the floor, holding the roses like a shield. Mom, he started setting the bouquet on my kitchen table, where they looked ridiculous. We've been doing a lot of thinking. Rita, right on cue, spoke up. We were monsters, Diane. Just monsters. I can't even, the things I said, I was just so scared. Scared of losing you. I, I push people away when I'm scared. She looked at me, her eyes brimming. And you were right. About everything. I just sat in my chair. I didn't say a word. I was an audience. I was watching a very bad play. You were right, Clifford said, kneeling in front of me. Kneeling. It was so over the top, I almost had to laugh. I've been a terrible son. I've been weak. I've been selfish. That confrontation in the hospital, it was the wake-up call I needed. You were right. You were right about everything. We've learned our lesson, Diane, Rita said, sniffling. We just want our family back. We just want you back. Please, Diane, can you ever forgive us? They were both looking at me, their faces a perfect mask of repentance. I looked at Clifford. I looked at Rita, and I let the silence stretch. They hadn't asked me one single question. They hadn't asked, how is your health? They hadn't asked, how are the treatments? They hadn't said, you look different. You look good. They were here for one reason, and one reason only. You're right, Clifford, I said, my voice quiet and steady. You have been a terrible son. And you, I said, looking at Rita, have been a terrible wife. But I don't believe you're here for forgiveness. The masks flickered. Just for a second. What do you mean? Rita stammered, the tears stopping instantly. I said, leaning forward, you're not here because you love me. You're here because the card was declined. You're here because the joint account is gone. You're here because you haven't had your allowance for almost a month. I looked at Clifford. How's the golf game, honey? Still using those old clubs? His face went white. Rita's face went red. That's not why we're here, she spat. It's the only reason you're here, I said. You're here because you're scared. You're scared you're not in the will. You've been thinking, even if she's mad, she'll die, and we'll get it all anyway. Rita's pale face told me I'd hit the nail right on the head. So, let's talk about the will, I said. I was done with their game. Let's talk about the one I wrote in the hospital. The one you're so terrified of. Clifford perked up. He couldn't help it. His eyes got wider. This was it. It's too late for this little performance, I said, because I did leave you the estate. I left it all to you. Clifford started to smile. A small, greedy, relieved smile. On one condition. The smile vanished. What condition? I looked straight at Rita. Then I looked back at my son. I left you everything, Clifford. The house, the stocks, the savings. All of it. On the one condition. That you divorce your wife, Rita. The air went out of the room. They just froze. Their fake apologies, their fake tears, all of it just evaporated. Their faces were blank, utterly, completely blank with shock. Rita was the first one to move. Her head snapped toward me. Her eyes were no longer full of tears. They were full of fire. You old bitch. There she was. The woman I remembered. Clifford was just stammering. You can't. That's crazy. That's not legal. You can't do that. I did. I said, I wanted to see Clifford. I wanted to see what you valued more. Your wife or your inheritance. I wanted to know what your price was. He would never. Rita shrieked, jumping to her feet. You're a sick, twisted, manipulative old woman. Am I? I asked. I looked at Clifford. He was still on the floor, on his knees, looking back and forth between me and his wife. And I saw it. In that moment, I saw the flicker. He was actually thinking about it. He was calculating. I almost felt sorry for him. But I didn't. It doesn't matter now, Clifford, I said, and his eyes snapped to mine. It was a test. And this little visit today, You've already failed. What do you mean? He whispered. I mean, I've been watching you. I saw you consider it, and I saw her true colors. So, this performance, it just confirmed my decision. I stood up. They seemed to shrink. I wasn't the sick woman in the hospital bed. I was the one in charge. But since you've clearly made your choice, you're still here together, trying to see what you can get, I've already called my lawyer. This morning. Their faces, I will never forget their faces. Oh, didn't I tell you? I said, walking to my kitchen, picking up the letter from the fridge. I got some good news. The chemo is working. The doctor is cautiously optimistic. I'm in remission. I turned back to them. I'm going to be around for a long time. And that conditional will, it's being changed. Right now, I'm revoking it. I let the words land. You get nothing. Clifford's face crumpled. Mom, no, please. My friend Elizabeth, I continued, gets the money I promised her. And the rest, the entire bulk of the estate, it's going to the Cancer Foundation at the hospital, the people who are actually saving my life. You get nothing. The explosion was immediate. No. Rita screamed. It wasn't a word. It was a sound. A raw, animal sound of pure fury. You can't. That's our money. We've been waiting. You owe him that. Mom. Clifford scrambled to his feet. His face was purple. You can't do this. That's my inheritance. It's my birthright. You can't give it to strangers. I can, I said, my voice like steel. And I am. My friend Elizabeth is more family to me than you have ever been. And those strangers at the hospital are the ones fighting for my life. You went to Paris. He lost it. He kicked my new coffee table. No, I won't let you. Get out, I said. We're not leaving. Rita shrieked. We'll get a lawyer. We'll prove you're incompetent. You're sick. You're on drugs. Get out of my apartment. I walked to the phone. I am calling the police. Right now. That did it. The real, ugly rage was all over them. They were yelling. They were cursing. Calling me names I can't even repeat here. But they were backing up. They were moving toward the door. Clifford grabbed the door handle. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You will regret this, old woman. You'll die alone. I'm already not alone. I said, I have myself. He slammed the door. So hard the walls shook. The roses on the table, the ones he'd spent his last dollars on, dropped a few petals. And then silence. When the door slammed, the silence that fell was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. The apartment was filled with the smell of their expensive, fake apology roses. I stood there for a long time, just breathing. I could feel the adrenaline in my veins, a hot, shaky buzz. But I wasn't scared. I wasn't sad. I walked over to the kitchen table. I picked up the massive bouquet. They were beautiful, I suppose. And they were a lie. I walked out my front door, down the hall to the community trash room, and I shoved the entire $100 bouquet right into the dumpster. I didn't even take them out of the vase. I went back inside. I washed my hands. Then I sat down and called David. David, I said, my voice is calm as a summer lake. It's Diane. Diane, he said, and he sounded worried. Are you all right? I am better than all right, I said. They just left. The final performance is over. I want you to go ahead with the changes we discussed. The ones from this morning. Elizabeth and the Cancer Foundation. Everything. Make it ironclad. Are you sure, Diane? He asked. I have never, I said, been more sure of anything in my entire life. That was the real beginning. The next few months were a blur, but a good blur. My life was no longer about them. It was about my appointments, my rest, and my recovery. The chemo continued. It was still a fight, but now I knew what I was fighting for. I was fighting for this, for my quiet apartment, for my friend Elizabeth, for myself. Then came the day I finished my last treatment. I went in, sat in that chair one last time, and let the poison drip into my veins. But this time, I knew it was the last. When it was over, the nurses, Maria and Ben, brought me to the front of the ward. There's a little brass bell they hang on the wall, a bell for patients to ring when they finish their treatment. I stood in front of it, my hand shaking. I was thin. My hair was gone, and I was just wearing a simple scarf. But I felt powerful. I took the little rope, and I rang that bell. I didn't just tap it. I rang it loud and clear, the sound echoing down the hall. The other patients, the ones still in their chairs, they clapped. The nurses clapped. Elizabeth was there, and she was crying. That was the day my old life ended, and my new one truly began. I am still in remission. My hair has started to grow back. It's not the same. It's soft like a baby's, and it's a bright, silvery white. I've decided I like it. My new life is small, and it is the most beautiful thing I have ever known. I wake up in my apartment. I make my coffee. I sit on my little balcony. I've filled it with pots of geraniums. I sit out there, and I read. I've rejoined my old book club. It's funny, I have so much more to talk about now. My purpose. I found that too. Twice a week, I go back to the hospital. Not to my doctor. I go back to the chemo ward. I'm a volunteer. I'm the one who brings the warm blankets. I'm the one who holds a hand when the needle goes in. I'm the one who sits and talks not about the sickness but about books or squirrels or the best place in town to get a cup of tea. I share my story, not the whole, ugly family part, but the part that matters. I tell them, I sat in this exact chair. I was as scared as you are, and I'm still here. Sometimes that's all they need to hear. I've built a new family. It's not one I gave birth to. It's one I chose. It's Elizabeth, who comes over every Friday for Scrabble. It's the other women from my book club. It's the nurses I volunteer with. It's a life built on mutual respect, not on obligation. And Clifford and Rita, I heard you hear things. David handled the sale of my old house, the one they were probably counting on. The proceeds went right into the Cancer Foundation's trust. I heard through the grapevine that they had to sell their house, the one I'd given them the down payment for. Without my money to prop them up, their whole expensive, showy life just collapsed. I heard Rita had to get a job, a real one. I heard they're living in a small apartment across town. I don't know for sure. And the most wonderful part is I don't care. They're not my problem anymore. I don't hate them. I don't wish them well. I just don't think about them. I have officially and completely cut ties. The peace that comes from that, it's indescribable. My new life is full. It's full of small, simple joys. The taste of a fresh cup of coffee, the sun on my face, a good book, a laugh with a good friend. It's not the life I ever planned, but it's the life I earned, which brings me to tonight. I'm sitting here in my comfortable chair in my peaceful apartment. I'm looking out the window at the sunset. It's painting the whole sky purple and orange. I'm smiling. I think about that woman in the hospital, the one who was told she had stage 3 cancer, the one whose son went to Paris. I wonder, what if I hadn't decided to take control? Would I have ever found this peace? Could I have healed in the same way? The cancer, that terrible, awful thing, it was a key. It was the key that unlocked me from a prison I had spent my whole life building. It's a strange thing to be grateful for the worst thing that ever happened to you. But I am. Have you ever been in a place where you thought you couldn't move forward? Where did you find the courage to change? Let me know in the comments. Your stories, your own experiences, they matter. They give all of us strength. If my story touched you, I would be so honored if you would like this video and share it with someone you know who might need to hear it. Please comment below. I'll be reading every single one. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. There's another story just like this one waiting for you. You can click it right here on the screen. Thank you for listening.